Hello, I'm Julianna Barrera-Gomez, and I'm here to talk about building a decision-friendly digital accession program at Harvard Library. I will say this work is done at Harvard utilizing Harvard resources, but I am here on my own, and my opinions are my own. The conference theme, where we're at, digital preservation in uncertain times. I will say our three-legged stools are feeling wobbly or tipping over entirely as we are reacting to new realities for those financial, technical, and management legs. The dream of limitless growth has faded, and the uncertainty of climate impacts, energy demands, and even political tides affect us all. In times of uncertainty, a good pause, or at least a back off from pace, for some self-reflection can really help. This talk, under the DigiPres section titled Mid-Program Assessment, is meant to demonstrate how a new program we launched has been able to detect an unanticipated need with those we serve and respond to this, with options, plural, for our partners by slowing down. As I said, I'm here to talk about our Digital Accessions program that we launched in spring of 2024. We refer to it as DAP, so naturally we have a DAP lab, which is kind of fun to say, and we have this fun lab sign outside the door. So how we came about, we started with internally published guidance from Harvard's Digital Forensics Working Group on common practices shared for Harvard collection stewards to collectively understand phases of the digital stewardship lifecycle and to be aware of Harvard-specific considerations. The people in this working group wrangled together university resources to consult, like the General Records Schedule, Harvard's information security and privacy resources, and they put all of this into some basic steps, which was actually very helpful for me to understand the landscape better. The working group created a digital stewardship lifecycle. Here's a really tiny diagram. Don't try to read this. It's just there to show you that it's complex. It's broken into 4 main steps for acquisition, accessioning, processing, and preservation. Their final report recommended disk imaging for physical media, and it also recommended a centralized service to focus on this highly technical accessioning portion of the lifecycle. That's the pinkish highlighted with dotted lines portion in the middle. With the archives backgrounded administrator to run it, that would be me, and the goal of helping to alleviate pain points for collection stewards who lacked people, time, or resources to set this up themselves. So this is how DAP was formed, as a centralized program within Harvard Library, but serving the over 50 different curatorial institutions across the university as we can. This service is offered by Digital Preservation Services with a staff of me, and our purpose is to empower collection stewards across the library and university to achieve their digital accessioning needs and goals. Our tremendous privilege was that we had no top-down mandate. This gave us some space to think about and plan to look around to see how others have done this. I am very grateful to Lance Stuchel from the University of Michigan Library and Alice Prehl from Yale University for sharing so much about the centralized services they administer and for doling out some wisdom when I reached out with questions. We definitely wanted to start with some test projects. We called out for pilot partners who had collections they were ready to process. We connected with different collections groups around campus to advertise this new program. We adopted a project nature. We specified agreements with a clearly defined start and endpoints. We sought partners who had small, less than 20 media objects projects that we could work through with our beginning forensic equipment, which is still being borrowed. And we explained the boundaries of the service to within the forensic working group's digital accessioning workflow steps, which aided in discussing this new service. We centered the pilot projects on DAP growing from use cases, learning from the collection stewards, who are the experts on their collections, about what is valuable. They would provide the definition of success for each project. Here's an example high-level DAP workflow to demonstrate areas of responsibility in the lifecycle model. It's on our wiki if you want to look at it. We learned a lot from discussions like DAP work is considered highly technical and complex. It sort of is. Stewards want to know that their processing work is being done correctly, but they are not sure how. We talked through a couple of Harvard-specific caveats, questions about security needs and Harvard's information security policies and risks to their units, collections, donors, communities, and even how and where they could process their collections. We considered how Harvard Library's preservation service, the DRS, won't know what's inside a disk image since it's containerized. Stewards would have to extract their content to preserve the files, if that's what they prefer, or create normalized files for patron access. Some common questions that we got. Do we have to make a disk image? What's best practice? And can you prove to my leadership that you'll be doing this the right way? What do we really do with disk images? Do we put them in the DRS? Do we hand them to patrons? There were some deeper considerations and some not so easy questions too. A lot of concern about privacy and a lack of transparency, or a lack of consent, especially with long gone donors. There was concern about how big disk images or drives could be, how to make files accessible, and what the resulting footprint, replicated across DRS storage, would be. The first step was to consult and share resources. So DANNG's disk imaging decision factors was shared with pilot partners to encourage them to self-select which methods they might consider choosing prior. We also had 2 additional resources that I pulled out that had Harvard-affiliated authors. Pendergrass 2017 on the many risk of retention, not saving disk images at Harvard's Baker Business Library, and Lassere Whyte, their work on harm and human decisions behind disk imaging, co-authored by a former practitioner at Harvard's Houghton Library. These are in the works cited at the very end, by the way. DANNG was actually very helpful. I will start by saying it did have some limitations. It is a media object specific for understood reasons. I'm not knocking the work that those people did. It is written to assist with evaluating each media object independently as an object outside of a collection's context. So this still mired us in this format-centric decision process that was perceived to weigh heavily toward disk imaging, especially for fragile media, which isn't really well defined. And the general feel among stewards, here at least, is that all physical media is fragile, which made me wonder if we as preservationists have kind of unintentionally created a bit of a shadow here, because some media is fragile and some media is not really. The pros of it. This guide, written by authoritative practitioners, officially states that logical file transfers are an acceptable form of data extraction. This went a long way to alleviate concerns for some who felt they did not need or want a disk image, and it lowered a psychological barrier. Disk images are not the only way. Logical file transfers might be a logical path forward. We did comparison tests for pilots. The real benefit of DAPS shined through here for me because they could trust our extraction methods and evaluate the outputs themselves. The takeaways that we got from this were that collection stewards preferred having a choice. They really appreciated contextual discussions and having agency, not a rigid decision tree or an automated workflow. Their definition of success depended on the context. So, reasoning for a contextual approach. This quote from the collective work, Information Maintenance as a Practice of Care, helped me see where I could help more. Information maintainers practice empathy. Care can be measured in terms of its emotional and practical impact, how we sense it makes others feel, and how feelings can change the terms of power and provoke or inhibit interpersonal action. I am not a psychologist. I am just a human who can't help but feel empathy and compassion for my colleagues. What I felt here at Harvard is that there are people full of anxiety, sometimes desperate for advice, fearful that they will cause harm to collections, to donors, to communities, to others, to the environment, to Harvard and their own job security, who are looking for help. There is an overwhelming feeling of fear, even dread, that they are incapable of protecting their collections, donors, and communities, or that they are at least powerless to prevent harm. The Forensic Working Group's recommendations to get a disk image and then process it using FTK or BitCurator just isn't a viable option for many at Harvard, or even for some of those institutions that originally authored this report, because people have left, and maybe some of those suggestions might have been a little bit more aspirational in nature. This quote, "While workflows and axioms can guide us and hasten work, room must always be left for choice. There are slow decisions, one that requires space and time, and there are human decisions. They are subjective, contextual, and the questions change. They often don't have a default setting." This is from Lassere Whyte's Balancing Care and Authenticity in Digital Collections, a radical empathy approach to working with disk images, and it helped us sum up the need for time and contextual decision-making, because decisions have to be made. Uncertainty creates a decision void. Reaching for best practices sometimes just helps us avoid difficult decisions. Disk imaging is an attempt at a time delay for physical media. The result of this kind of auto-action, we have even more archival debt and a virtualized backlog, with its ballooning storage cost and carbon footprint that is now more easily exposed to privacy and security risks. This slide from Pendergrass's BitCurator users forum about decisions processes for his team at Baker Library was another somewhat jarring revelation to some of our stewards. The virtualized backlogs we have, or plan to create, with the best of intentions for saving fragile data to be processed at some future point, are not protected by our restriction and use policies. More than ever, our collections and the lives of people within them are vulnerable to the whims of those capable of issuing subpoenas. Keeping it dark is not an option. So how can we be adaptive to shifting needs? How can we help collection stewards feel more informed and in control of the accessions workflows they would like DAP to utilize for their collections materials? I'll point to another helpful quote, this one from Ben Goldman's essay, It's Not Easy Being Green, Digital Preservation in the Age of Climate Change, which helped us balance the fear of loss with the abilities we have as archivists and preservation practitioners. Lossiness is a word with negative connotations in the digital preservation context, but perhaps loss can be a sustainability strategy if we account for the environmental context of our work. We can do this without sacrificing our archival authority if we are transparent about our preservation practices. For Green and Ham alike, archivist power lies in deciding what to save, what not to save, and accepting that the impermanence of some records is not only likely, it is desirable. These are the key takeaways for DAP that we picked up in the past year. Collection stewards need time to think about implications, to discuss with their colleagues, to consider options. This happens at DAP project selection and can continue throughout the whole process. They need to know about limitations and risk inherent with any capture process. They want well-informed, structured choices, and they need to feel supported in those choices. This has helped us build an adaptive program, one that isn't prescriptive but allows collection stewards to feel informed, to feel in control, and to feel supported. I'll wrap with some parting thoughts and some more quotes that we found helpful. At its heart, chasing after innovation has been a process of fear of being left behind. In the wake of the disruption of innovation and this time that we declare exists after disruption, we can accept our vulnerability as a starting point and stop thinking about how to do more with less, thinking more about what we should do with our limited time, space, and resources, and with the connections we have to each other and our communities. This is from Trevor Owens' book published last year. It's helped me shift my focus on what's possible and what should be done. This is written by the folks at Power, who you will have heard from yesterday, as a series of tips for leadership to understand the emotional and relational dimensions of digital stewardship work and act with intentional care. So this is tip 5 that they offer. Model emotional intelligence and transparency. Supportive leaders set the tone. By modeling emotional intelligence, acknowledging uncertainty, naming discomfort, owning mistakes, administrators give practitioners permission to do the same. Transparent communication around priorities, risk, and trade-offs also help staff feel respected and informed rather than managed or siloed. I am no one's supervisor. I have no official authority, but I recognize that my status as a technical expert means I have a responsibility to be supportive and transparent for those who are consulting or working with me. I want our collection stewards to know that this is hard. And it is so beyond technical bits, the vintage drives, the old cables, the fancy software. They are having to do the hard work of finding a path around the many perceived obstacles and danger zones. And there will be mistakes, but we are in this process together. All of us need to endeavor to be the stewards of digital stewardship, and also its stewards. We need to center around care work for collections and those people who are charged with caring for them. We need to be sure to give space to listen, to be ready with questions, to be ready with making connections, to find resources to help. And we should always remember to respect stewards' insight, their boundaries, and their decisions. Some ways that we collectively can start doing this, and people have been talking about this for a long time. It seems like now's a great time for a reminder. Might we critically examine our assumptions about disk imaging and user needs, and share resources for when this is a must for current users. I'm very happy to see that the folks at Easy and Spin have started work with this. Let's avoid virtualizing our backlogs, which effectively migrates risk to the cloud. Let's recenter digital archives work as archivist work. It's not forensics, it's not archaeology. Let's not romanticize here. There are some practitioners who are doing deeper forensics examinations for their own specific reasons, but that should not be the assumed norm. Decisions are labor. Let's not undervalue them or focus on subjective wrongs. No one wants to be that previous archivist who messed stuff up. Let's recognize that people before us had limits on their resources, just like us. Let's think beyond item level, the disk image level, and let's instead focus on collections. We can't save it all. Can we save some part of some of it? And let's all remember to respect the whole digital stewardship lifecycle. We should think holistically about preservation's purpose. It's about saving what has been selected as worthy of saving. It's not a backup. Let's honor the cycles of decision-making labor. Deaccessioning is always there as a step to consider. Let's use it and remember that it's not anti-preservation, it's just part of the cycle. Here's a list of works I cited from. Thanks for your time.